So this morning we've seen how to create a menu component with React. So we've seen how to deal with the mobile version. Yeah, here you go. And then we've seen how to deal with the desktop version as well, right? Depending on what the resolution is. This is good. I'm not gonna add many changes from a user perspective today. However, I would like to highlight some technical challenges we may face now. So this morning, some of you have requested whether it was possible to refactor or restructure our menu component into smaller chunks. And the answer is absolutely. We can do that, we should do that, but be careful, because that's going to be harder than it seems. Let's actually follow some natural steps. Ignore the folder structure. Ideally you should create new folders, blah, blah. But for educational purposes, I'm going to create the new components in the same file, which, by the way, is not a horrible thing. Yeah? I think if your component is small enough, I think it's acceptable to have different functions in that component. Yeah? All right, so let me create first of all a new component called menu button. I'm just going to move things around. Yeah, so I'm not gonna write any new functionality or anything like that. And menu button will essentially, yes, deal with the button component. And likewise, I'm gonna create a new component. Actually, let me display it before I forget. Menu button, and then likewise I'm going to create a new component called menu box. Yeah, once again I'm trying to follow some semantics. I'm trying to build a story around these semantics. All right, so you got menu box, and then oops, I went too far, so I'm gonna oh, again, sorry guys, my laptop is very slow. All right, let me select the menu box. Here we go. So let's display the menu box. And then let's just paste the content of the menu box, which are the items of the menu. All right, and then I got a question for you. So, the only thing I've done is just moving things around. If I go back to my web browser, what's going to happen? So it's going to show the menu button and the menu box. And what else? So is that going to work, guys? Right. So that's massively wrong, I'm afraid, Elena. That's never ever gonna work. Let's try it. Look, failed to compile. Set is open is not defined. Is open is not defined. Is open is not defined. In other words, guys, you remember we had the set is open function. But where is that function declared? That function is declared on the main menu component on line number 5. We cannot access, guys, we cannot access that variable outside of the menu component. You see the problem? So set is open is only going to be available on the menu component. Is open variable is only going to be available as part of menu component. And the same problem affects both the menu button and the menu box, because the menu box doesn't care about the method, but it do cares about the is open properly. So that's wrong. We cannot actually deal with the problem in that way. So can anyone tell me how to? Let's ignore the method for now. Let's focus on the property. So can anyone tell me how to access is open on both menu button and menu box components? Sorry, Max, you were saying something, or Aaron? I think that was Aaron. Never, ever. If you put that outside, you're right. I mean, first of all, that's not crazy. Because then, from a visibility point of view, that's correct, Aaron. From a visibility point of view, so now is open is going to be available in all the components. However, that doesn't really make any sense because the hooks are used as part of React components. If you use them outside, look, invalid hook call, that's the first thing React tells you. Yeah, look, hooks can only be called inside of the body of a function component. So that's not gonna work for sure. What else? Ah, that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting, Elena. Indeed. So we can pass, I mean, it's open, it's a Boolean, true, false, whatever, but it's a Boolean, right? So why don't we do that? Oh, sorry, not that. Give me a second. Why don't we put is open equals is open? And then is open equals is open. Why don't we pass props all the way down? So can anyone tell me what should I modify on the menu button component? Yep. That's correct, Vicky. Yeah. So we are passing is open and then we are destructuring it to obtain access to the variable. Yeah. So that's okay. That's gonna work regarding the property. But now the tricky question is, and what the hell are we doing with this set is open? Can we do the same thing? Can we do that? Well, let's see what happened. Let's see what happened, first of all. We don't get any errors, so, first things first, right? And then, hey, it works. It works. It works. Yeah, and then if I go back to desktop, it works. If you are applying to a junior position, that trick may work. However, if I see that code written by a person who is applying to a contractor role of 5, 7, 800 a day, that person is out immediately from my side. Why? Look, let's analyze the structure of React. So I'm going to show you something. This is a pattern. And this pattern has been adopted not just by React, but also today by other libraries like Vue.js. Historically speaking, let me go back in time to 2011. In 2011, imagine that you got three components. Actually, let's use the same names just for simplicity. You got menu, and you got menu button, and then you got menu box, I think, right? So guys, I'm trying to write some sort of hierarchy of components, yeah? Like a family component tree. So menu is the parent of menu button and menu box. So menu button and menu box, they are siblings. So back in 2011, what we did with Angular is we hold the state here in the root component menu. So here we have something called is open, true, false, whatever. Yeah? So then the idea was we pass the state to any other child component, like for instance menu button, or of course also menu box, and then any component was able to change the state. So if the menu button wanted to hide the menu button will say no, now it's open false, and that will be propagated to all the other components involved in that story. Yeah? That's the way Angular works. And back in 2011, that technique was considered something fantastic because that gave us a lot of flexibility. Yeah, that gave us a lot of flexibility. That's what we call the double binding pattern. Double binding. Why double binding? Because anyone can change the data, can update the view model, the state. Yeah, that was back in 2011. However, we start working with Angular, we start creating more complex components, and then here I'm oversimplifying the problem. But you know, we got a tree of 2 levels: menu, menu button, menu box. But as you can imagine, eventually we may have 20 levels. Yeah, menu button, icon, menu button, tooltip. You know, that tree can obviously grow. And then we realize that sometimes, obviously, things don't work as expected. So whenever something doesn't work as expected, imagine that at some point, excuse me, at some point, the user refreshes the page, and then suddenly the menu is open. The thing is, who is the responsible? Who took that action? That's wrong. Something is wrong. But who changed the isOpen boolean from true to false? Was it the menu? Was it the menu button? Was it the menu box? Was it the menu button icon? Was it the menu button tooltip? You see the point? It was very difficult to point with your finger to the responsible of taking that action. Yeah. Because of that, back to 2013, React changed that. React introduced the single binding pattern. So with the single binding pattern, the idea is different. The idea is, I got a state, fantastic. If you got a state, the state always remains into the root component, which is the menu. So then, if the menu button or the menu box want to update the state, they are actually not allowed to change the state. They are not allowed to change the state. So the way it works is, if the menu button wants to change the state, because you know the menu button wants to change the state, because the menu button will switch on and off, right? So if the menu button wants to change the state, it will ask the parent to do so. Yeah? So in other words, how many components can now update the state? Only one. That's correct, Vicky. Because now the menu has the entire responsibility of updating the state. If when the user refreshes the page, suddenly the state becomes wrong, invalid, we know that our finger should point to the menu. And then of course, the menu can say, no, wait a minute, but I updated the state because this guy told me. But we can establish breadcrumbs. We can debug why the hell the menu decided to update the state. With a double binding pattern, it's super flexible, super cool. It works like a charm in a demo, but in the long term, it adds a lot of complexity in the development journey. With a single binding pattern, it simplifies the journey a lot. To the point that now you got Vue.js, and Vue.js is also using the single binding pattern. And as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure about that, it's been a long time, but I think Angular, starting from version 2.x, it's also using the single binding pattern. In other words, that technique introduced by React, and I remember perfectly the first time I saw that, I said, what the hell, these guys are silly, right? Why the hell are they doing that? Long term, as with many other things, the community had to accept that React developers were right. Yeah. So that's a good example. Here we are breaking the entire principle about how to use with React, because now the menu button is updating the state. That's wrong. The state should remain here and should be updated here. So then the question is, how can the menu button ask the parent, which is the menu, please, I want to update the state? Look, what we can do is we can pass a callback function, something like that, onClick. OnClick is something I just made up. Out of coincidence, that's the same as clicking on a button. I can rename it to onBrexit, just for testing purposes. Yeah, you can take whatever you want. So now, look, menu button, onClick. When I click on the button, I want to call the parent. Yeah, I want to call that method. So now, what do we do here? Well, now it's up to us to decide which action the root component wants to trigger whenever any child wants to update the state. So in this particular case, we are gonna flip it. You see, it is only the root component that is responsible of switching the state. Obviously, that should be renamed instead of on Brexit. I don't know. On button switch. I don't know. It doesn't really matter how you call it. The idea is that you can pass props all the way down. Yeah, you see. So menu pass props to menu button and menu box is open. But it works on the other way around. The children can invoke methods. Yeah. So the children components like menu button, they can bind with a method here. So when the children call that method, then the parent will take an action, whichever the action is. Yeah? That pattern is very powerful, and that massively simplifies the way of dealing with properties. Questions? Again, I'm not telling you this is a piece of cake, I'm telling you this is vital. Vital. So after this workshop, please just follow my steps. Build the same example again. I got a question for you. Do we really need to, does now the menu button, doesn't need the is open property? Look, not sure if the resolution is good enough, but can you see that is open is grayed out? Has a different color. That's telling you something. It's telling you, hey, why the hell do you want this property? Look, is open is declared, but this value is never read. Now, we don't need to pass that property. So it's simplifying a bit the structure of our component. Yeah. So maybe we can even put everything in one line. Yeah, more or less. I think it's short enough. Yeah. So the menu button doesn't even need to know if the menu is open, if it's closed. It has no idea. The only thing it knows is whenever the user clicks on the button, it will tell the parent, hey, I've been click, take an action, come on. Yeah? And then it's up to the parent to take the responsibility of deciding what to do whenever the menu button is clicked. Let's see if it works, first of all, because if it doesn't work, I'm talking bullshit, right? So let's see if it works. All right, so you got the menu, and now, pop, you see? So nothing has changed from a user point of view. However, now we managed to split the code. We managed to divide one big chunk of code, a big component called menu, into smaller chunks, menu button and menu box. Questions? Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good question, Max. And once again, as far as I know, there aren't strict guidelines about when it's acceptable to have multiple components in the same file. When should you change them? When should you? As far as I know, there aren't strict guidelines. If you know any rule created by Airbnb or something, maybe there are, but to be honest with you, I don't know them. The rule I have is it all depends on the complexity of your file. How long the file is. Look, this file is 34 lines. Look, I'm going to show you how that file looks at my native resolution. So my native resolution, I know it's going to be very small now, but that's the way it looks natively on my screen. The rule I used to follow, and I've been following that rule for, I don't know, more than 10 years, is, can I see the whole file in one go? If the answer is yes, to me, then it is acceptable to keep these components in the same file. If, however, I got a vertical scroll, you can see in my screen, I can see about 40 something, 46, 47 lines of code. You see? If suddenly I need to scroll, then I will start thinking about refactoring. Okay? But to me, the most important thing, rather than whether menu box stays here or moves to a new file, the most important thing is to deal with smaller functions. I personally prefer to have 3 functions, 3 components in a file, if they are very small, than having one large file, one large component. Why? Because if tomorrow, because of whatever reason, that file keeps growing, for me, it is very easy to move things around. I can just, extract the menu box. I can just move it to a new file easily. So it's going to be much easier to scale your software. The worst thing you can have here in React is one large component, because it's going to take you a while to refactor it. You see here, to refactor the component, I had to play a bit with props, with callbacks, with things like that. So it wasn't trivial. Now, if I want to move these things to a new file, just I cut the component, I paste it in a new file, export, import, and that's it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There is something that irritates me, is if I land on a project and the first thing I see is one file with 300 lines, there is something wrong. That requires some action. Guys, have you heard about the Boy Scout rule? So the Boy Scout rule, that applies to Boy Scouts, but it's really useful for coding as well. It says something like, leave the land in a better shape than you found it, something like that. So I'll give you an example. If I land on a project and I see that that file has 3,000 lines of code, I mean, that's a bit exaggerated. Yeah, I hope that will never happen to you. But if you find something massively wrong, you may not have the time. You may not have the time to spend 2-3 days refactoring that component, because that plays against business. Business, in many occasions, they don't even know what the word refactoring means. So how can you defend that you're not going to produce anything for your customers for 2 days? That's sometimes a bit challenging. Yeah? That's an ongoing battle between developers and business. However, the Boy Scout rule is, hey, I got a file with 3,000 lines of code. I don't have time to invest to make it perfect. However, all right, transforming one file of 3,000 lines into 300 files into 30 files of 100 lines, which is the same, will take me 2 days. Okay, that's too much. However, why instead of having one file of 3,000 lines, we end up having 2 files of 1,500 lines each? You see, is it perfect? No, we still have 2 massive files, but at least we are leaving that file, we are leaving that component in a better situation than we found it. We found one file of 3,000 lines, and now what we got is 2 files of 1,500 lines each. That's the Boy Scout rule. Ideally, of course, every component should look great, small, encapsulated, blah blah. But reality tells us that that's not always possible. And when I'm working on the Codility platform from time to time, I need to do refactoring, and sometimes I have to spend hours refactoring my code, because what something is acceptable today, it may stop becoming acceptable, because code evolves, techniques evolve, you get a better understanding about the problems, of the flow of your application. There are multiple reasons why at some point you want to refactor your code. Anything else, guys? Alright, so I got one more thing for you. You told me this morning whether we wanted to change the word menu with an icon. So let's do that. I don't want to type the word menu, I want to display an icon. So there is something important here. When talking about icons, there are 2 types of icons. Can anyone tell me, does anyone know which type of icons the web supports today? That's correct. We got vectors, SVG, and what's the other one? The classic, guys. Bitmaps, PNG, JPG, GIF, whatever. Yeah? Can anyone tell me what's the difference between a vector and a bitmap? You can see. That's the right answer. That's the right answer, Elena. Vectors have infinite quality. Infinite quality. Let me present you an example. Guys, give me a country with a weird flag. Australia. No, not Japan. So look, I'm gonna open the Australian flag. Actually, that's maybe not the best example, but it may work. All right, Australia flag. See, I'm just trying to find the picture. Australia flag, and then let me try to find the picture. Yeah, Australia flag, and then I'm gonna find the same flag, Australia flag, SVG, in SVG format. So the differences. Let me try to render that. With the bitmap, the bigger, the more you zoom the image, the worse it looks. It gets pixelated because that's an image. Yeah. However, SVGs have infinite quality. So if I show you an SVG, actually that's not an SVG. Wait a minute. That's not an SVG. Original file. Yes, I want you to. That's an SVG. That's an SVG. Can you see, guys? I'm not sure if that's the best example, but can you see? Look at the. Exactly. There are no pixels with an SVG. Look at the star, guys. That's a PNG, and that's an SVG. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So, which one should we use? SVGs or PNGs? That's correct, SVGs. That's particularly important, guys, when using Retina displays. Yeah, everyone today has a very expensive smartphone. Even if it's not very expensive, they have a really good screen. So today, iconography is even more important when thinking about mobile than desktop, because in desktop, unless I zoom it, unless I'm a creepy person who likes to zoom images, I'm not gonna see a huge difference. Yeah. However, on mobile, without any zooming, you can spot the differences. Yeah. So SVGs offer much better quality. Another advantage of SVGs is, generally speaking, let me highlight generally speaking, they are smaller in terms of disk size. Yeah, so you can have more images at the same price. Yeah, that's another. Guys, I can see a lot of background noise, so not sure if it comes from many of you. Yeah, so SVGs are clearly a better alternative. So I'm going to use an SVG. And now the question is, where? Guys, sorry, I need to check who is making the noise because it's a bit annoying. So SVGs. Where did you get SVGs from? I mean, obviously there are multiple free resources out there. It feels very weird. I'm now particularly talking about the portfolio. I've seen when the majority of developers start working with a portfolio, you can see that each icon has been taken from a different source. Some icons are from here, other icons are from there, and it looks really weird. It looks like I don't know, like the carnival or like the, Brazilian party. I don't know, something that works well in some environments, but no one's talking about coding. Yeah. So when talking about coding, it is important to make sure that all the images, ideally, are taken from the same source, because they will have some sort of styling, common styling. So let me show you where I used to take the icons from. So there is a very nice website. I think they are Germans. I'm not 100% sure, maybe I'm wrong. Called Icon Monster. So I'm gonna paste that on a Slack. because when I need an icon, the first thing I do is, I try to get the icon from here, because all the icons have a common style. Yeah? So yeah, I've sent you the link, and now it is true that if you want to find some special icons, they are not gonna have them. But at least the first thing is try to find the icons here. So for instance, if I search menu, you see I got different menu related icons. So I'm gonna keep it easy, and I'm gonna select the first one. So you agree with the license, and then you download it. All right, so once you download the icon, I mean, thinking about the web, an icon is just an icon, yeah? So from a integration point of view, it doesn't matter if it's an Svg or if it's a bitmap, generally speaking. So something I would like to do is I would like to move the icon to my project. Remember, guys, that all the icons, yeah. That's correct. Sorry, guys. That's correct. So yes, you are right. So if you